Welcome to Spotlight on Guilford. I'm Terry Kane, and I'm very excited this evening to be welcoming into the studio two members of the Guilford Foundation. First, we have Liza Petra. Welcome, Liza.
Thank you.
Liza is the Executive Director of the Guilford Foundation.
Indeed.
And next to Liza is Tom Pinchbeck,
Hello.
who is the Vice President of the board at the Guilford Foundation, and also General Manager of Operations at Roses for Autism.
That's right.
The beautiful Pinchbeck Roses.
Thanks.
So welcome both of you again.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. I wanted to really talk about what's going on at the Guilford Foundation. What kind of grants you've been giving, a lot of things about that recent week, the Foundations Week. What was that? What was
The
the
National
National
Community
Community Foundations
Yeah,
Week, which I
that's a
read
good-
about in the. Yeah, that was
That's a good
good.
place to start. Yeah.
Good place to start.
In part because the whole purpose of the National Community Foundation, or the National Week on Community Foundations, is to really provide an opportunity to explain what a community foundation is.
Right.
There are over 700 in the country. Community foundations, we all do essentially the same thing, which is pool community resources and invest back into the community forever. And so it was a great opportunity to have 1 week where we just got to sort of talk about ourselves and what we do. In essence, a community foundation is created by the people for the people. We provide some grants and some leadership and do some other work within the community, but the important thing is that it all sort of stays local in response to local needs, and it connects the people within the community who potentially have the resources to the causes that really matter to them.
So how did our community foundation get started here in Guilford?
You want to talk about that?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because we were just at our last meeting. We were talking about all the trees that came down on the Guilford Green, and that was really one of the first initiative of the Guilford Foundation came together to help put trees on the Guilford Green, I guess. And I don't, of course, I wasn't involved in it way back then. I think it was formed in the early 70s?
1975.
75.
Yep. 5 friends.
And do you know who they were?
I know them, but I don't want to name them because what if I forgot
You'll forget
one?
somebody.
Yeah, you don't want to forget anybody.
So we've, and in fact, there's been a sort of an outreach from the community. We've heard from a whole bunch of people in the community that they want to try to do something about these fallen trees and,
Right.
plant new trees or
Right.
how to get started on that.
I know a lot of us were there right after the hurricane.
Climbing all over the trees.
Climbing all over the trees, but there was more than one person there with tears in their
Yeah.
eyes. It was really devastating to see.
Yeah.
My 10-year-old burst into tears. There were 12
Really?
trees in all that were
12?
lost.
I actually didn't count them.
Either
I filmed
that
them,
actually
but yeah.
fell.
They're going to
or were
remove.
so-
Some of them they have to remove. Right.
they do have to remove.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Because they're
All right.
basically a splinter. And they
Right,
won't
the
fall.
splintered
Cracked
ones. I was
trees
wondering
or-
if that would be able
But
to be
this is,
saved.
as Tom was saying, this is a nice opportunity for us to really go back to our roots, no pun intended. Well, little pun.
A little
yes.
bit of a pun.
To sort of bring those pieces together as a convener. So folks
Right.
who are interested in providing some funding there, as well as working with the town of Guilford, who of course has the ultimate authority over the green, plus the Green Committee, which is a separate group of appointed folks who talk about the best way that the green should be managed, and then the Garden Club, which is a local nonprofit organization that provides funds for trees. So we're actually working with all of them together to figure out what is the best plan, and then raise the funds in order to address the 12 lost trees. And our goal, which is somewhat of a stretch goal, is to raise $10,000 actually. And also, part of that might be some in-kind services by local landscaping providers who will be able to bury the trees or
Yeah.
remove them. So, but again, I love what Tom mentioned.
And
which-
someone's collecting. There's a piece of it.
yeah, the St.
Someone's
George.
collecting the wood and is going to use the
Yes.
wood for furniture or something like that. There's some pretty
That's
neat
a great
creative
idea.
things
Yeah,
going
a lot
on.
of,
Yeah,
lot of people
right.
were thinking about what could we do with that.
Right.
that
Right. So, but there's a cycle to all that stuff. I mean, back in the
Right.
'38 hurricane, there was the elm trees that came down, and
Yeah.
the green has changed over the years, and it's just another. I don't know, just another notch there that
Right.
sort of make us we might bend, but we're not going to break. You know,
Right.
sort of improves us in a way. So
Exactly. Change is hard,
Yeah.
but then we get through it
Right.
and find the other side of it.
Absolutely.
And with coming together as a community.
sure.
And part of that is, as you mentioned, the leadership of Guilford Foundation to be sort of the catalyst for bringing that together. How do we bring together the funds? Am I
Yeah.
getting that right, kind
Yeah,
of?
you are. I mean, part of it is I think many in the community rightly look to us as a funding source. We review, Tom sits on the grants committee, we
Right.
review a lot of grants over the course of the year. In fact, we were just talking, and already in 2012, by halfway through our fiscal year, we had already allocated or awarded or spent 90% of all of our budgeted grant amount. And so we don't like to turn people away, but you know, we simply did not have the resources to meet all of the needs that we saw this year. So granting is a piece of it, and we can talk more about some of the fun, you know, the exciting grants we've done this year.
Right.
But the other piece of what a community foundation does is that other piece, which is responding immediately to emergency or new situations that come up, like the fund drive for fuel
The
assistance
fuel,
last
right?
year.
Fuel
Which was
assistance.
last
yeah.
last year, and that was
Yeah,
that was
it was
a
the beginning
real
of this
need.
year. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it started in
We-
2012
End of
in January?
2011 and
Okay.
beginning of 2012,
Yeah, and the
right?
drive was
Right.
actually, it started on Valentine's Day, if you remember,
Okay.
and ran for 6 weeks. And we worked in collaboration with the Madison Foundation and the Branford Foundation, and
Right.
we ended up raising and distributing over $80,000 to folks, to organizations that would then provide the funds to folks in need
Yeah.
to help pay for that emergency fuel assistance, which is
Right.
exciting.
Right. That is.
And we were able to
exciting.
respond. I mean, we got the word that this was becoming a really big issue for the winter of 11-12, and it was just a matter of weeks, really, I think, before we were able to cobble something together with
Right.
the local foundations, and then we did a matching incentive kind of a thing. So we were all able to not only pool our money together, but use that as a leverage to get participation in from the community to local communities in Guilford, Madison, and Branford to sort of just come up with this great sum of money to help people out. So
Yeah. That's
it
wonderful.
was quick.
It was quick.
And yeah, to operate that quick with a board and one employee, which
Yeah.
is you.
Well, yes, for Guilford, and then for Branford, there's another board, and Madison has its own
Right.
board.
Its own
board,
so
right.
the fact that all three came together so quickly, as Tom mentioned, was really, I think, a testament both to, I think, the spirit in general of our communities.
Yes.
So we were very glad.
I think the timing was right too, because we've been working in the past couple of years. We've been creating the relationship of working with the Madison and Branford community foundations, which is nice. And we were looking for a project that we could all feel good about jumping on, and that was something that popped up right at that time. And hey, all three communities were excited to participate in that. So,
Right.
which isn't always the case. You might find that tree program is great in Guilford, but maybe not the biggest interest in Madison,
Sure.
or who knows, or
Right.
something that's interesting in Madison that wouldn't be applicable to what we're trying to do. So
That's a good point.
Yeah, that is a good point. So just back to a little nuts and bolts, who is the Guilford Foundation? Who are the people who make these decisions? It would be your board, right, coming together. And so how many members of your board do you
well,
have?
we have two boards. We have a board of directors and a board of
Okay.
trustees, which was
Corporators.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
that's okay.
fairly newly created 2 or 3 years ago.
Yep.
The board of directors is, I don't know, a dozen people maybe?
Yeah, 15. Yep.
15 people. Like any group, there's an executive board who makes a lot of the decisions, day-to-day decisions with Liza, and then there's the board that meets on a monthly basis.
Then we have various
Thursdays.
committees. Yep.
It's pretty regular. It's
Yeah.
a quick meeting. It's fun. And then we have committees that meet outside and report to the board. There's a grants committee. I don't know.
Right, there's a grants committee, a development committee, a marketing committee.
Oh,
and
okay.
so when it comes to grants, so the nuts and bolts are that because we're a private nonprofit, We have a board that governs our our operations in general. People are very interested in how grants get chosen and selected and
Yes.
identified. And so we do, as Tom mentioned, we have a group of, that's called the Grants Committee. It's 5 people led by the wonderful Stephen Page of Page Hardware, who's just been a real great leader of that group. So we collect the applications on a quarterly basis. It's on our website that I can provide. And once a quarter, we review those applications against the available funding that we have. First, the review starts out with the grants committee, and then they look at it, they talk about it. If there are questions, we might go back to the grantee. They have to make sure they have a certain number, the documents are all in order.
Right.
So if it's okay, the committee comes together and makes a recommendation to the full board. And so the full board will say, well, we believe that GCTV really is a worthy organization, and we would certainly like to support their efforts to improve their technology. This is a true story.
Right.
So we took that to the full board. The grants committee then makes a very formal recommendation to the full board, and then the full board votes on it. Typically, the board does not have a lot of, does not change any of the application process. They really believe and trust the grants committee to have done
The grants committee makes a recommendation to the board to accept or not accept the proposal, and
right. And the amount that might be.
and the amount,
Yeah.
right? And there's a discussion clearly, and things are often tweaked, but rarely is the the whole gist of it changed.
And then we go back to the
Right.
grantee with the good news or the other news.
Right.
And then try to work with them and give some feedback, and we look forward to, we're always trying to improve our own process for
Right.
how can we make it easier, because we do really, our mission, one of our purposes is to enhance the quality of life in Guilford, and we know that our nonprofit organizations such as GCTV are the real worker bees behind that effort.
Right.
So
you've given me a great opening.
Oh, good.
To thank you both and thank the Guilford Foundation, because GCTV has received a very generous grant from the Guilford Foundation for improving our technology. In a business like this, of course, communications, media, it all depends on keeping up with the technology, and if we don't do that, we don't exist. So we are going into something called server technology, which means in the future, thanks to this grant and thanks to other fundraising we're doing, we will be able to stream live. We will be able to have the technology to be instant in our communications. And this has a lot of ramifications. And this is the place where I think that the Guilford Foundation and GCTV really share a mission, and that is to serve the community and bring the community together. And for us, it's through communications, through allowing this freedom of speech to everyone and allowing everyone equal access to the latest technology in media. So the ramifications for us would be, for example, during the hurricane. Now with server technology coming, we will be able to instantaneously get messages out to our community and not rely on something that's happening next door or the other area of Connecticut or in New York or wherever. It's going to be what is happening in Guilford, because server technology will allow us to even remotely post things on 18, 19, and 20 for the public, education, government. So our government will be able to post, emergency services will be able to post anything, and that will be available not just on TV, because of course maybe the power's out, but on your smartphone, on your laptops, you'll be able to watch GCTV with
Through
those
the internet or
through the
computer,
internet,
right.
through the computer. So we are so grateful for your partnership in this, and very much looking forward to stepping into the future.
Well, we were delighted. We were excited to get the application and to be able to invest in it. It's a tremendous service that GCTV does to the community, and you've outlined it beautifully. And it was really a no-brainer for us, and we wished that we could have funded twice as much as we had funded, of course. And we actually look forward to working with GCTV to help raise the additional funds that you need, because it's a costly investment, but it's a purposeful and meaningful investment, and we really stand behind that and believe it.
Good, thank
And,
you.
and it's an example, too, I think, of, oftentimes the Guilford Community Fund, which is separate from us, and the Guilford Foundation get somewhat confused because we're both providing funding to the community.
Right.
This grant is a perfect example of the differences that we provide. The Guilford Community Foundation is a phenomenal, or community fund, I should say, is a phenomenal organization that provides ongoing operational costs and support to organizations going forward. I'm not sure if GCTV is one of the member agencies, but many of the other local service agencies are, and it's ongoing operational support. Something like this, a new service, something infrastructure improvements, is not something that would generally fall under the community funds bailiwick because they're too busy supporting, the general ongoing work. This is an opportunity where a foundation can come in and provide a one-time, or in this case, a multi-year grant to help you reach these ends.
Right. Yeah, no, that's right.
So we were so delighted to do it. We're looking forward to it. And it'll be nice to have it online, and we can then, also post things up, stream things through Facebook and our websites and those.
Oh,
pieces as
absolutely.
well.
It'll
So we're
really,
excited.
and it all connects us as a community even that much better.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important today to get that
Definitely.
community work going there.
Absolutely.
So can we talk numbers a little bit as far as what are we talking about as far as the Guilford Foundation? What are your funds that you're working with? Is it, a couple $1,000s? Is it, $500,000? Can you tell us about what you've got?
Our annual budget for granting is, I'm trying to remember.
70,000.
70,000.
Oh, that's
And
a
that
nice
So it's pretty
chunk.
significant.
Yeah.
And it has some designated funding. So we have some funds that go directly to the Guilford Library, the Guilford Preservation Alliance, the Agricultural Society. And then we have some scholarship funds. So off of that $70,000, there are some designated funds that go out
And
immediately.
those just go out. That is just a known entity.
They either have a
Yeah.
targeted,
Yeah.
not-for-profit, or just a general theme of like scholarship or something like that.
Right.
Right.
And then there's some open-ended, non-restricted funds, which obviously give us the most latitude for creative projects and things like that. So,
Right.
Our overall endowment is about $1.4 million currently, which is not bad. And of that, we have about a 5.25% spending policy. So we try to invest from that. We want to keep it growing. So we don't spend all of the income, but we spend a portion of it back within the community.
Yeah.
So, and we'd like to get that to $5 million and then bigger than that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that that gets us to the other, behind the wall of the, we have the granting, which is great. And we can support a lot of groups with the granting. The other side is the fundraising and creating funds, and we've done a couple of new projects on that just in the past couple of years. One of the things that we've created is, of course, we're always looking for people to help us with any amount, but we were also looking for building funds, or being available there for people who want to create a fund for a specific purpose or just to help Guilford in general. So we created this Build a Fund program, which has been pretty successful. We've had 3 or 4
I think it's 3.
3.
Right now. Yeah, 4 new funds, 3 of them are Build-A-Funds.
Build a fund. So the idea is that you have 3 years to come up with 5 years to come up with $10,000, and if it's for an individual who's donating the money, we incentivize it somehow.
Right, right. So
Maybe you can fill me in on the details.
I know,
It's sort of coming out of my head.
No, it's good. That's great. So we have the Acorn or Build a Fund option. To establish a fund within the community within our foundation is $10,000, and as Tom mentioned, we provide this Acorn Fund opportunity where you can put $1,000 down. So you don't have to be a Bill Gates, or a Oprah Winfrey. You can be a Tom Pinchbeck or Eliza Petra and do this. So you put $1,000 down. You have 5 years to get to $10,000. To sweeten the pot a little bit for those funds that are being developed that will support Guilford initiatives in particular, once you reach $8,000, the Guilford Foundation has committed to match the last 2.
Oh, that's sweet.
So it sweetens the pot. Yep, and they're a limited number. We can't do, oodles and oodles of them.
No, that's right.
However, it's a nice way to sort of get your feet wet in the
Right.
philanthropy world. I think a lot of folks are, don't consider themselves philanthropists when the reality is, we've all purchased Girl Scout cookies. So in some ways,
Right.
We're all
Right.
philanthropists, and this is a way to make it very real. So then within 5 years, you have a fund that exists forever at the Guilford Foundation, and depending on how you would like to see those funds
Right.
spent, you have some, at the beginning, you have some direction about how those, whether you want it to go for youth or, as Tom mentioned, general
Right.
purposes, or maybe
Yeah.
a scholarship.
So let me be specific about this and throw out a what-if example.
Okay.
So let's say I really am interested in this as a question. Let's say I want to establish a fund.
Right.
So my major interest is gardens. I'm the manager of the
Community.
Len Hubbard Community Garden.
Right.
So I really want that to just live on forever, and I want to establish a fund. So do I establish that as an individual, or can I establish it as the Hubbard Community Garden, or as an individual, or does it matter which way I do it?
You can do it either way.
I can do it either way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part of our mission where we work with donors
Okay.
to meet their philanthropic needs. I mean, it's a very personalized service. I mean, there are lots of options available. As you mentioned, it can be a dedicated fund to the Len Hubbard Community Garden. It can be the Terry Kane Fund for the Community Garden. It can be a group of your folks coming together to create this fund. And
It
then
could be the
once-
community garden coming to us with
Yep.
with a nest egg that they've built and saying, can you help us grow this
Correct.
to support the community gardens?
That's right.
For
In perpetuity.
in perpetuity, yeah.
And then you have the fund, and then a portion of that money every year goes directly to the organization.
So it's an endowment. If you wanted to create an
okay.
endowment,
Okay.
Maybe the community Len Hubbard community fund group comes together and amasses $10,000 and brings it to us and say, can you help us grow this?
Right.
And we'd like to have the proceeds go right to the community gardens.
Oh, so I can actually help establish this fund, but the money goes back into my own organization,
Right.
like the nonprofit Len
Right.
Hubbard Community Garden.
Or you as an individual
proceeds,
could say,
yeah.
I really want to start my own family fund, but we're really excited about community gardens, and we'd like the money to go to a local community garden.
Right.
So for the next 5 years, we're going to donate $2,000 a year. Actually, only need to do it for 4 years because we'll kick in the fifth. And you can direct. Technically, it's a suggestion, I believe, because since the money has been donated, it's
Donor-advised fund.
a donor-advised fund, right?
Well, it
It's
can
not-
be. You
it-
can
it-
create a donor-advised fund or a designated fund. If it's a designated fund, it
You don't
goes
have to
wherever
worry
you
about
send-
it. It would
right.
just go to the community, Len Hubbard community. Yeah,
But,
there's so many
yeah.
options. It's almost it's hard to keep it all straight, but
Right. So
but it's a critical part of our
Yes.
organization.
Yeah.
And we have, as I said, we started this. We have 3 funds, and we have we have a total number of funds of maybe 20 or
I think we're at 24.
yeah.
Yeah. But one of these great funds that one of my favorite stories of this is actually one that our former president, Tim Geelan, put together with a group of his soccer
Right.
buddies.
Oh.
So Tim is a true passionate believer in our Guilford Foundation, and he also has an urgency to make sure that his friends, are all being philanthropic as well. So with his soccer team, the Guilford Bell Curve, they pulled their resources and created and established the Guilford Bell Curve Fund at the Community Foundation. It's a donor-advised fund. This whole group of soccer players is, contributing to it. And then we work with them. Once they reach their 10,000, we'll work with them to distribute the funds. And the reason that it's nice to establish one of these permanent funds at the Guilford Foundation is that, God forbid something happens to the Len Hubbard Garden. you know, the interest wanes, or, you know, in 50 years something happens that you can't foresee. Well, the funds still exist at the Guilford Foundation, and it will revert to a cause that is similar to whatever it is that you wanted to do.
Okay.
Right.
That was actually my next question. What happens?
What happens, right?
Yeah.
Nothing lasts forever.
That's
in,
right.
in
Forever.
perpetuity is a
Right.
tough
Right.
one.
Right. Actually, I could go into another story, but I won't, because I know we're on a timeline. But
Yeah, we probably are getting close to the end of our time, and I still want to talk just a little bit about, now that we're all excited about this, how can our listeners, our viewers, donate to the Guilford Foundation? You know, maybe someone wants to get in on helping with reestablishing the trees on the green, for example. That's the
Right.
most immediate. So how do we go about that?
well, there are many ways. If someone can establish a fund, a charitable fund, as we've spoken about, for up to $10,000 plus these options going forward. If someone is not quite ready to make that leap, we also accept donations to existing funds. So any denomination we would accept in any sort of variation, cash, stock, appreciated, you know, securities, any of those giving options.
And if you go onto our website,
Yep.
you'll see a list of those existing funds and the purposes for,
Right.
you know, their intentions and where the money goes. So
Right.
there might be something that really meshes nicely with your interest,
Right.
whether it's, you know, could be anywhere from like vocational training to,
Youth
right,
to the Stevens Tree Fund, which is how we're going to fund the rebuilding of the
Green?
Of the green.
It's
so
called
maybe you find a match
Stevens
there and you
Tree
can,
Fund.
Yep.
you know, specific,
Okay.
you know, designate a certain amount of money into that.
Yeah. And we, of course, appreciate unrestricted gifts, because that allows us to serve, to respond to emerging needs. Right?
Like
Because
the
it's
fuel.
not, right, like the
We didn't
fuel,
know about the
exactly.
fuel thing until
Right.
until it was a crisis,
Right.
and then
Right.
we can, because we have unrestricted funds, we're able to respond so quickly.
But we would always have a conversation. I would encourage anyone to call me at the foundation office or email me, go to our website and check it out, and we would be delighted to have a conversation with anyone.
And the website's easy. It's guilfordfoundation.com.
.org.
.org.
Yep.
Guilfordfoundation.org.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right. We should say that a couple more times so everyone knows.
Guilfordfoundation.org, and maybe the magicians behind the camera can put it underneath.
Put it underneath. Maybe. We'll see what our technology's like.
That's right.
Well, I want to thank you both so much, Tom and Liza,
Terry.
for joining me in the studios today. And
Thank you for
we'll be
having us.
talking again soon.
I hope
Yeah.
so. Thank you
It
so
was
much.
great coming
It was a
here.
All
pleasure.
right. And
Appreciate it.
thank you so much for watching.